This guy I've overdone Quinn Ewers. My head's exploding. I've watched this guy probably 25 games, and being honest, I struggle with him. I just don't see him as a true starting NFL quarterback.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It's a teaching tutorial Thursday presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. That means Greg Cosell, the NFL Films legend, is in the house. Hopefully I have time after Greg goes over kind of his tier 2 quarterbacks at the Combine. I want to get into some of the winners, some of you that spread the word via social media or take advantage of any of our sponsor offers. Hopefully I'll have time for that at the end of the show. I don't like messing around when the great Greg Cosell is in the house. It's big show time.
The Big Show.
Man, Greg, I've been looking forward to this one because of how much feedback we got on your breakdown of 4 of the quarterbacks last week. Last week, for those of you that missed it somehow, you got to go back and check it out. Greg had a clear number 1 quarterback in terms of Cam Ward. And then his number 2 guy, which was surprising to some people, was Tyler Shough from Louisville. And then we also talked about Shedeur Sanders and Jalen Milroe as well. There's a bunch of other, I don't know, I guess I would say big name guys, Greg, in the sense that, you know, they've been playing major college football for a bunch of years and people kind of all know that. It's crazy. I mean, some of these guys, how about this, Greg? One of the guys I'm going to ask you about, I'll just start with him, okay? Dillon Gabriel.
Yeah.
Greg, I did Dillon Gabriel UCF against East Carolina in 2019. And Dillon Gabriel was throwing the ball to Gabe Davis.
There you go. I thought you were going to say you did him in like 1990.
No, but 2019. I mean, it's 2025 right now. And Gabe Davis just finished his 5th year in the NFL. It's absolutely unbelievable. So when you watch Dillon Gabriel, what do you see from him?
Well, let me just say this, because I know, as you know, I get a lot of comments too. People respond. This is just based on tape study in college football and then thinking about their transition and their projection to the league. And just to make one quick comment, you know, one quarterback that's garnered a lot of conversation, obviously, is Shedeur Sanders. And just one thing to keep in mind, teams have done studies. I'm one person, so I can't do studies over 20, 25 years. It's very easy to say when you watch Shedeur Sanders, for instance, that his O-line was bad, and it was not good. We know that. But one thing that stands out and that holds true, Ross, for teams that have done these deep studies, is quarterbacks that get sacked a lot in college get sacked a lot in the NFL. And we're going to see what happens, for instance, with someone like Caleb Williams, who was sacked over 80 times in 2 years at USC, and therefore, and look how many times he was sacked in Chicago. And it's always easy to say that it's the offensive line, but that's just something to keep in mind. No knock on Sanders, no knock on Caleb Williams, but studies have been done that show that. So just these are things to keep in mind as you think about quarterbacks and the transition, because that's what we're ultimately talking about. So
you know
now let's get to Dillon. Go ahead.
I want to say this. You're 1,000% right. To me, it's a red flag. On some level, Greg, you either, and I do think you can get better at it. I will say that. If the coaches keep harping on it, I do think you can get better at it. But on some level, you either have, you get it about throwing the ball away or getting rid of it, or you don't.
Right.
And that would be a huge, because by the way, I do care about their offensive line a little bit. Here's the other thing, Greg. In the NFL, they get to you faster.
Yes.
And in the NFL, they confuse you more. So if, let's say out of the 80 Caleb Williams sacks, okay, I don't know how many are him holding the ball, how many he was confused, but that doesn't get easier at the NFL. And the NFL, those guys get on you like that,
And
they confuse you more.
And one other quick point, and I think this stuff's really important for people to understand about the NFL game. The other thing in the NFL is you have to work from what we call squeezed and muddy pockets far more than in college, where you have to function intelligently and effectively when there's people close to you, okay? And that doesn't mean just leaving the pocket. You have to be able to make throws from the pocket when bodies are close to you. That's a necessity in the NFL. And some quarterbacks have to learn. Like, for instance, I thought that C.J. Stroud struggled a little bit with that this year, and that is the next step in his learning process because he's such a good thrower of the football. He just has to learn to become more effective when there's people close to him. That's a necessity in the league.
And it's so funny that you say that because that was my concern with him coming into the NFL because I never saw anybody around him at Ohio State.
Correct.
It was like he had a pristine pocket and Olave and these guys are wide open. I thought, wow, he's going to be in for a wake-up call when he goes to the NFL. Hey,
anyway, let's get. I just wanted, it's just because I get a lot of really intelligent comments on social media, from a lot of people who really love this stuff, and I just want to, again, guys can improve, guys can change. This is not a knock on everybody's career. This is based on college tape, and then and a projection and transition to the league. So let's get to Dillon Gabriel, who's actually very.
I'm sorry, Greg. Real quick,
go ahead.
I got to ask you this. Your comments on Tyler Shough and having him as your QB2 last week got a lot of attention. And you're just going on tape study. Did you
Correct.
get any feedback from anybody?
I did.
That?
I heard from people in the league who have seen him in person, and have stood next to him and watched him throw. And all those comments I got from people in the league were that, hey, you're 100% right. You just have to be around this kid and see him in person, which I obviously will at the combine, but I haven't done that. I've been just watching tape. But normally the tape tells you so much. I've also spoken to guys who have been GMs in the league who are not the least bit worried about his age. The injury history is a little more concerning. The age is not, just so people understand that. Anyway, if we want to get back to someone like
go for it. Dillon Gabriel.
Yeah, Dillon Gabriel was a fascinating watch for me. He's obviously very small, and he looks small on tape, and I think he came in just over 5'10" in that range, and that's obviously a little bit of an issue. He certainly has below average physical measurables. His arm talent is okay. I mean, the ball does come out pretty well in the short intermediate areas, but he's got really good timing. He plays with a sense of rhythm. He's decisive. So now you think, can this guy be a starting quarterback? What kind of offense would he have to be in? See, that's what you have to think about. Everybody's going to say the obvious, which is what I just said. But then you think, can this guy be a starter? And that's a very open question because he would need a really good run game. He'd need a really good O-line. He'd need receivers that can win. He'd need a play-action pass game that was really effective, that really impacted the defense. He would need to be allowed to play within rhythm. Now, he's also a mobile quarterback and a plus athlete. But if you're going to put him out there, he would need all those things. My sense is he'll be seen much more like a Taylor Heineke type player who's a backup and probably would be a good one. But he's a fun watch.
Question about him. When I watched him, and maybe it's because they're both from Hawaii, and maybe it's because they're both left-handed, and I get all that. But man, he reminded me, Greg, of Tua with just how quickly he gets the ball out.
Yeah.
His anticipation, ball out quick, accurate. Can you compare him to Tua for me? Because
it's interesting that you make that comparison because Tua is only 6 feet as well. I think Tua, you could argue they're somewhat similar in that regard. And Tua is in a very specific kind of offense. And don't forget, look at what Tua had in Miami with those receivers. I remember when they signed Tyreek Hill, and the first thought of mine was not Tyreek Hill vertically, but the first thought of mine was Tyreek Hill in the Mike McDaniel offense, catching short passes where he's open and run after catch, playing within rhythm, because that's what Tua is, and that's what Dillon Gabriel is. So, again, some coaches could look at Dillon Gabriel and think, man, that guy fits how I want to play, and I could line him up and play. And other coaches will say that, hey, this guy's small, good arm, but nothing special, no special traits. It's going to be hard for this guy to make it. He's going to be one of those guys. And it's those guys are hard. My guess is most people will see him as a backup type player. That would be my guess.
I think the guy that probably got the most comments on youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL last week that we didn't talk about was Will Howard from Ohio State. He strikes me as a guy that you would probably like. Big kid, Philly kid. What did you see on his tape?
Yeah, Howard, I watched a ton of him last summer at Kansas State, and I kind of liked him, and I've seen, I have to do a little more work on him for this year, but I've seen some. There's really strong snapshots in his tape of being a quality quarterback, where he worked progressions on vertical and intermediate route concepts and combinations, where he showed an aggressive throwing mentality and was really confident turning the ball loose on NFL-type throws. For instance, when you see the back of a defender, you're taught, as you know, Ross, if you see the back of a defender, throw the football because the defender doesn't see the ball. And he did that. I thought that this is never talked about, but I thought he was really, really good on checkdown. So what I mean by that is when the intermediate or vertical route concept was not clean, instead of waiting in the pocket for it to develop and know that it's not clean, and then throwing a check down, which gives the defense time to rally up, and it becomes a 2-yard gain, he was very quick to see that, hey, that's not there down the field. Let me throw the check down, and then he'd give his back 15 yards to run. And nobody thinks about that. But those, I think, are really good quarterback plays that end up sustaining offense. And he's pretty athletic. I mean, he's not Josh Allen, but he's a big kid who's athletic. I thought he was a good processor. I thought he threw the ball well on the move. He does give you the quarterback run game situationally, and when needed, he did run with some physicality. I keep going back and forth on this kid, Ross. I've talked to people who think, oh, he's a backup. They just throw that out automatically. He's a backup. I don't know about that. And like I said, I want to do a little more work on him because I keep going back and forth in my head on him. But there's something there with this kid.
You didn't say anything negative.
Oh, well,
why is he not a top 5 pick?
Yeah. I mean, look, I would say that there were times that he really hurried his delivery with really bad footwork. And when he hurried his delivery, he lost the ball placement. He will definitely have a question about, because he's so long, about working effectively from muddied and squeezed pockets. There's definitely a question about that. He does not have a big arm. I'm very anxious to see him throw in person. I thought some of his intermediate and deeper throws didn't come out with the needed velocity. They lost some energy. So, those are things that really stood out negatively. I did speak to a scout who works in that area, who is a good friend of mine, and, was seeing him up close, personal, been on the field with him, and he said when you watch him throw in person, it just doesn't come out the way you'd like it to come out. Obviously, I haven't seen that, but that's what, I was told by someone I respect. So there are going to be questions about him for sure.
I'm curious about the next guy. It feels like he was in college a long time. It also feels like we always have interesting conversations when it comes to Lane Kiffin's offense. And that's Jaxson Dart from Ole Miss, Greg.
Yeah, Jaxson Dart grew on me the more I watched him. I think he's a really interesting guy. I watched him last summer as well, and then I watched him, of course, this year. And I would say that, don't forget he played in the same Lane Kiffin offense for 3 years. And when you see a guy play in the same offense and he gets really comfortable and composed within that offense. So he had a really refined understanding of the schematics of that system. Now, that focused on no huddle tempo. It more often than not, Ross, it eliminated a lot of pre-snap research of the defense. The emphasis was much more on rhythmic primary reads than higher level progression concepts. So, these are things that when he gets to the NFL, obviously every coach wants the primary receiver to get the ball, but that doesn't happen that way in the NFL. You saw multiple RPO concepts, a lot of basic one-read throws. But there's still something about his game as I watched more and more of him that I liked. I mean, he was willing to make tough throws. He attacked man-to-man coverage, no question. And there's a toughness and competitiveness to his game that showed up in all phases. And he was willing to stand in the pocket and make late in the down throws in the face of pressure. I always view that as a positive. And again, everybody has the things that are important to them. I think in the NFL, you've got to be willing to stand and deliver. You can't just flee out of the pocket. Now, he is a plus athlete. He'll give you the design quarterback run game. He's probably a better athlete than people might think in many ways, like Bo Nix in that regard. I think his legs will be a factor in his transition. But I think that he was a beat late on some throws. You always ask me, hey, what's the negative? I thought he was a beat late on some throws that were clearly defined. All young quarterbacks need to get better at late coverage rotation in the NFL. He's going to have to get better at that. I think I'm fascinated to see where he's going to get drafted because I think there's something there with this kid. I spoke to some people as well that say the kid is just phenomenal, that he's one of those kids, people follow him. So, obviously I don't know Jaxson Dart, but he intrigued me the more and more I watched him. I have to say that.
He's got some swag, that's for sure. He does not lack for confidence, and you could see that when you watched him play.
Without question. I could even see that on the coaching tape that there's, I hate to use the word it. That's not a word I use, but you could see that there's a toughness and competitiveness to his game that definitely stands out when you watch his tape.
Let's talk about Kyle McCord, who, for all I know, Greg, might be in the office with you right there. Grew up in Mount Laurel.
Yeah, that's right.
There,
that's right.
And played at St. Joe's Prep. Ohio State fans didn't really love him. He goes.
Nor did Ryan Day.
What's that?
Nor did Ryan Day.
Yeah, evidently not. He goes to Syracuse, and man, they just threw the ball all over the place. It was crazy. That must have been a different tape to watch summer versus what he did this year.
Yeah, Kyle McCord raises the question. The larger macro question of the pocket quarterback in the NFL that doesn't have really high level traits. So what do you do with those guys? I think McCord is a guy, he's got really good size. I mean, he's close to 6'3", he was 224 at, I forget whether he was at the Senior Bowl or the East-West, but so we have his measurables. I would say his arm strength is probably average by NFL standards. He does play with a pretty refined sense of timing and anticipation. He's a pretty natural anticipation thrower, but he's just, I've been watching him. It's funny, I was watching him this morning as well, and I'm going to keep watching. Guys like that I end up keep watching, Ross, because I watch them and I think, okay, what is he? What is he in the league? Not what is he in college? We know. I mean, I think he completed more balls he had more attempts, more completions, more yards than any quarterback in the FBS. So, I mean, the guy, there's a ton of plays to watch. But like I said, it sort of raises the question of when a guy is a pocket quarterback, and he made some throws on the run, but he's not going to be a runaround guy. He's not going to be one of those guys. So when a guy's a pocket quarterback, what does he need to be able to do? I'd be concerned about him when the pocket is muddied and squeezed. He doesn't have a big arm. He has a tendency to lift his back foot off the ground before he delivers the ball. So that limits your core torque and your weight transfer and impacts both your accuracy and the ability to drive the football. So I'm not sure. I just feel like when I talk to guys at the combine, I feel like they're going to tell me he's a backup.
So I'm just throwing this. I'm not comparing him to these guys, but I'm just saying, like, if the next three guys were all coming out in this year's draft, okay? Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Drew Brees, would we not describe them as pocket quarterbacks that don't have higher level traits?
And you might. That's the thing. And that's why
I mean, none of those guys was a great runner. None of those guys had like a crazy big arm.
No, and Ross, that's why this is hard, and that's why people who just make these definitive comments, I try not to do that, and of course, when I speak about a negative about a quarterback, people assume that I hate the guy and that I just don't like him. I'm trying. I think about the positives, the negatives. How does it fit? Maybe because you have to remember the way NFL coaches think. They think in terms of scheme adaptability. Like Sean McVay, if he's looking at a quarterback, what is he thinking about? Can this guy run my scheme? He's not necessarily thinking, his arm strength is a 9.8 versus an 8.2. He's thinking, can he run my scheme at a high enough level that we can have a good offense? Kyle Shanahan, can he run my scheme properly? That's what NFL coaches think about. I try to think that way when I watch a guy. So when I look at a Kyle McCord, and that's why I struggle a bit, because there's clear limitations in his game. Clear limitations. Does that mean he can't play at all in the NFL? There might be 4 or 5 coaches that look at him and say, you know what? In the context of my scheme, with the players I have, this guy can line up and run my offense.
All right, Greg, got to get to one more guy. Quinn Ewers from Texas.
This guy I've watched. I've overdone Quinn Ewers. My head's exploding. I've watched this guy probably 25 games, and being honest, I struggle with him. I just don't see him as a true starting NFL quarterback. So I think that he's always had really bad lower body mechanics. Throws way too many balls off balance, impacts his ball placement, his to me, his arm strength. People say, boy, this guy's got a gun. He doesn't have a gun on tape. Maybe he's got a gun in the backyard in shorts, but because his mechanics are so poor, he doesn't play like that. But he's played a lot of football. He sees it pretty well. But I don't see it with him. I just don't. And maybe I'll be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time. I just don't see it.
Check him out on social media, because he's going to be at the Combine. Next week, we got to do a recap, Greg, of everything you saw at the Combine. I don't know what position group we'll do, but we'll do a position group that we don't need much time on, so that we can spend a lot of time with what happened at the Combine. Can't wait to talk with you next week. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ross.
I swear Greg is like getting better with age. He probably drinks AG1 like me to support his immune health. I do it every morning. It's the first thing I drink in the morning. It is an awesome nutritional supplement. I've been working out probably a lot of days, twice a day. I've been eating better, and I have been all over AG1, which is a sponsor. Here's the deal. AG1 is offering new subscribers a free $76 gift when you sign up. You'll get a welcome kit, a bottle of D3K2, and 5 free travel packs in your first box. So make sure to check out drinkag1.com/Ross to get this offer. That's drinkag1.com/Ross to start your new year on a healthier note. drinkag1.com/Ross. Have I told you guys lately what I love about Smirnoff? Well, I'm going to do it again. You can get the world's #1 vodka without breaking the bank. It's what the good folks over at Smirnoff call Smirnoff Extraordinary. Plus, right now, they've partnered with Complex, letting fans get their hands on some amazing items, handpicked by celebs, including NFL legend, Super Bowl champ Vernon Davis. They're all just $12.99, just like a bottle of Smirnoff. Head over to SmirnoffDrops.com to check out upcoming drops and check out these Smirnoff Extraordinary items. Go quick, they won't last long. Again, that's SmirnoffDrops.com. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Pricing is at the sole discretion of the retailer and may vary by state. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age.
Tux Takes.
All right, Ross, the latest news is that electronic measurements might be on the way. The NFL says the chain gang will strictly be a backup in 2025.
Well, so that's going to be whether or not it's a first down or not. That the technology's not ready, as we talked about in an episode with Sam Schwartzstein, I don't know, a week or two ago, the technology is not ready to actually spot the football, although they're working really hard on that as well. All kinds of different cameras. But what they should be able to do is not have to have the chain gang come out on the field. They should be able to know whether or not it's a first down by where the ball is placed. So that's cool. That's progress. That would save some time, although there's not that many measurements anyway, to be honest with you.
Offensive lineman Jason Peters, he retires in place for a veteran mentor job with the Seattle Seahawks at age 43.
Cannot believe he was still technically part of an NFL team till age 43. Turned 43 in January. One of the best teammates I ever played with. At one point, I was a starter on a team where he was on the practice squad. That is definitely maybe my claim to fame. Maybe I should put that in my social media bio. I was there the first day they moved him from tight end to offensive line, and it's one of the craziest things I've ever seen on any level. He had never done it before, and nobody could beat him. He was good literally right away.
We've got a contract. The Bills, they signed wide receiver Khalil Shakir to a 4-year deal worth up to $60 million.
I got to be honest with you, Jack. I don't understand this one. I don't understand why people aren't talking about this. You know I love the Bills, my favorite team I played for. You know I love Shakir, big fan. $15 million a year? That seems like a really, really bad contract for him compared to what other guys make. Why is he making so much less than like Brandon Cooks or guys like that? I don't get it.
And Penn State edge rusher and potential number 1 pick Abdul Carter has a stress fracture in his foot that may require surgery.
Ooh, yeah, that's not good. I saw where our guy, Pro Football Doc, Dr. Chow from SportsInjuryCentral.com, he thinks he should just get the surgery now. It won't be 8 weeks, but that he could be back in time for the season. Just put it behind him, which my guess is that's probably what he will end up doing. Other than that, as if I couldn't already love my dudes at Labatt enough, now you can get cool stuff for doing what you're going to do anyway. Drink beer. It's called Buy Beer, Get Gear from Labatt. Head to the website, snap a photo of your receipt, upload it instantly to rack up points for exclusive merch. How cool is this? You get points for every purchase at any store, bar, or stadium, any size, any product, anywhere you're buying Labatt. Buy beer, get gear. Go to rewards.labattusa.com to sign up. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. Huge fan of telling other people in life how you feel about them. This is the best way I've seen to do that. And remember, anybody that ever gets an order from myfrontpagestory.com, I guarantee I'll send you a signed autograph. That's pretty cool. Backofficescheduler.com, humanheadnyc.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.